And now let's meet our guest for today. Judy Ryan is the owner of Expanding Human Potential, a training and consulting firm specializing in cooperative practices with corporate, education, family, and government settings. She works as a trainer, consultant, executive mentor, and coach. She is also a frequent conference and radio presenter, has a regular column in the St. Louis and St. Charles Women's Journals, has written, managed, and delivered large-scale community, school, and family grant projects, and helped organize youth contribution rallies. She is in strategic partnership with Lindenwood, Webster, and Park Universities and the Missouri Teachers Association. Judy Ryan is also an executive board member, program chair, and facilitator coordinator for the networking organization ESPW. Welcome, Judy.
I'm so glad to be here.
I am so excited to talk with you today, and we are talking about wholeness.
Yes, and I was so glad when we decided on this topic because it's everything. If we all only understood how we are so magnificent and we are so whole and we spend so much of our life looking for the evidence of that, and it's right in front of us, but we just don't see it. So it's a great thing to be able to proclaim that you already are enough, that you have done enough, that you have everything within you to know that you're enough, and you just have to take the time to really discover that about yourself.
And remember it. I mean, there's so many people walking around this world and feeling separated and disconnected and trying to grasp, why am I here? What is this all about? And I know your company has done just tremendous work in this field. So where do we start?
Well, I can tell you just a little bit about what my first thoughts are about wholeness, is that we adopt a particular psychology model that really is about wholeness. In fact,
we as your company, correct?
Expanding Human Potential,
right.
Yes. And we use a number of psychology models that are all very strength-based and encouraging models. The primary one is based on the work of Alfred Adler. Mm-hmm. And there were 5 things that he discovered about human nature that I believe are coming into their own. Our culture has been so dominated with fear and force and win-lose dynamics where people don't feel very whole. But now we're coming into awareness about what it really means to be a human being and what is really needed for happiness. And I'm just going to take a little aside for a second here. Mm-hmm. Just when I said the word happiness, it reminded me of an article I recently read about a study on the happiest countries. And I unfortunately can't remember what country. It was some small country on an island that was very happy. Out of 178 countries, the United States was 150. So that doesn't say a whole lot. Even though we are one of the largest consumers in the world, we do so much. We bring so many of our problems and even our work into our vacations, for example, but we don't necessarily have the happiness that we're seeking. So happiness and wholeness are not something that are really outside of ourselves, and yet we spend so much time seeking that. What I love about Alfred Adler's psychology model is that he understood that human beings, first and foremost, are social beings, that everything we're doing is in relationship to our social needs with one another, beyond our physical survival needs, once we get past that point. And there are some very basic core needs that all of us have to feel whole. And a lot of those, we come into the world feeling whole, knowing our magnificence, and we think that we're kind of the kings and the queens of the world when we're first born.
Yeah, watch any toddler.
Yes. And then we kind of get that sort of pushed out of us over time, unfortunately, right, by well-meaning parents, by well-meaning adults. But that's one of the basics, is that even the hermit who's withdrawing from the environment is responding to something in the social order. So that's first and foremost. Second, we're self-determining. We are always creating our own reality. We're creating our own experience of what our life is, what our personality is, how we're going to operate in the world, all of that. The third thing is that we're purposeful, which is a little different than self-determining. Purposeful is on a day-to-day, moment-by-moment basis. I am doing things to achieve certain goals that I may or may not be aware of. I might not be conscious of those goals. Like if I'm late all the time, that's an area where I may want to look at, wonder what my purpose is for that, because there's something unconsciously going on for me that is tied to that. Everything has a reason. The fourth concept was that everything that we do is subjective. So I could be born as a twin, and I could be seeing through what looks like the same lens as my twin and see the world very differently. And Adler and some of his followers said we're great observers but very poor interpreters. And then the last one, which is the most about holism, is that we are holistic. And what that means is that everything we're doing is to try to get to a state of what Adler called a felt plus. That means we're always trying to feel that sense of belonging and significance through those core needs of feeling powerful and influential, feeling lovable, feeling connected, and feeling that we have contributions to make. So what happens is, for example, let's take the worst case scenario that some of us might think, say a drug dealer on the corner, doing a lot of damage, okay? But if you look at the fact that that person has been trying to find belonging and significance, and maybe the first place they found that belonging and significance was in a gang, where they felt like they mattered, where they felt connected, and all of a sudden, because that need was being met, they accepted that that's the way they'd find their breadcrumbs. And what's happened is that when we're able to take those concepts into, say, prison systems, and people in prison are often, there's a very high rate of people in prison that repeat offend, and that's the recidivism rate. It's like 60% or higher. Well, when they become aware of the fact that they, in fact, did have a positive intention behind their very negative choices, they can then
the positive
re-choose.
intention meaning wanting to feel like a part of a group,
Yes,
wanting to feel love.
right.
Okay.
Knowing that they were striving for wholeness. And when they really get that, then they can start to remember themselves as whole. Because before that time, they've already bought into the illusion that they're not whole, that there's something broken, that there's something bad about them. And most of our society would support that illusion with them. And that's the danger, that if we continue to support the illusion that people are not whole, that they're broken, that they need to be fixed, that there's something wrong with them, then they will buy into that illusion, and then there breaks down the wholeness that's available to all of us, not only individually but collectively.
So let me go back to summarize those key points. And this is Adler?
Yes, Alfred Adler.
Okay. Wanting to belong, having the social significance, is that what you call it?
Well, wanting a sense of connection.
Sense of connection.
Belonging and significance are kind of the catch-all, but the four ways that we feel that belonging and significance are through a sense of power.
A sense of power. All right.
And that, by power, we're not talking about force and control like we do so much in war and all kinds of things where we're
It's not power over something.
Not power over. It's that intrinsic power of knowing that I can influence, that I have an effect on things, and that effect is potent and it's welcome. That's the kind of influence that we all crave. And sometimes we'll take the cheap substitute, which is force, because we haven't been given the opportunity to really express fully and expand fully into our power that is a God-given gift. So that's one.
Okay.
Another one is a feeling of knowing that our uniqueness, who we are, delights others, that we are lovable. And a lot of times it's very interesting when we work with people, they may have started to emphasize more around helping people to feel appreciated and loved, but there are so many places where we don't even recognize that we tear that down. If you think about even your own self-talk, how much of your own self-talk is around helping you to feel lovable?
I love the phrase, our uniqueness delights others.
Yes.
Because that is the whole energy of this radio program, awakening to yourself, awakening to that gift,
Right.
that authentic gift that's only yours to share with the world.
Right.
And for people to really internalize that gift will truly delight others.
Yes.
Is such a paradigm shift.
Right. And first, you need to delight yourself.
Yeah, you gotta believe it. Yourself, exactly.
It's so interesting to me because what I see is how much of mirror life is for us. And when you delight in yourself and when you fall in love with yourself, you start to see all the other people that are around you that have fallen in love with you too. And it's amazing. And that feeds a whole set of attraction into your life of what you want to further see. It's a building process. I had a great example just coming over here. I got lost and I pulled over and I asked a man to help me with directions, and he was a maintenance guy that was doing weed whacking. And he said, you know what, I don't know how to tell you, but I'm parked way over there. I'm going to go all the way to my truck and get in it and take you all the way to where you need to go. And that's the kind of thing that you attract in your life when you fall in love with yourself, when you see your wholeness. It's as if the whole universe is supporting that view of you, and it's
what
amazing.
An amazing place to live in. You know, just individually, and just imagine a city or society, a country. We would be very happy then.
Absolutely, absolutely. If we only knew.
We can move up on that chart.
Absolutely. If we only knew how amazing we are.
Okay,
and
so
we don't.
We've got this sense of power, which is a self-power, not a power over other people.
Right.
We have our uniqueness delights others as a, what do you call these concepts? Or
I call them the core needs. They're the core
needs.
social needs for belonging and significance.
core social needs. Okay, so what's the third one then?
The third one is that we have a sense of connection and a sense of community. All institutions are basically communities. Most of them are very dysfunctional because we've set them up on an old model, but community is critical. It's part of our social nature. So we're always operating in some sense of community, but if we don't feel that as a pleasurable thing, then we're going to be seeking a way to feel that as a felt plus. So that sense of connection is very important.
And that word felt plus, spell that because I'm...
Well, it's like what you feel? Felt,
okay.
as a positive. So
F-E-L-T with
right.
a plus sign.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's a very interesting little visual. We were talking about having a sense of connection and community. So let's expand on that a little bit.
Well, the problem is it's so interesting when you think about how we're talking about wholeness and that we're all whole human beings and we have this magnificence. And yet when you look at our communities, in our schools, in our corporations, in our world,
in our families,
they're not very successful. They're not very healthy overall. That's why we have so many amazing innovations in businesses. And yet for many reasons that have to do with the sense of community, those businesses fall by the wayside. They fail. And lots of problems occur around the sense of community because of the way that we have operated in our institutions, even as old as the family institution, which is an interesting point because one of the things that we love to talk about is that most of our institutions are based on win-lose and on superior-inferior dynamics. And it's not that we want to treat each other so...
Like dog eat dog.
Yeah, dog eat dog. We believe in dog eat dog. I like to believe in dog feed dog.
Yes. Win-win. I'm all about win-win.
Yes, and yet we want that. In fact, an interesting story that I like to tell is that when we came over from Europe, not all that long ago, less than 300 years ago, we came with this amazing idealism that we wanted to have equality for all people. And in writing, we put that down perfectly, that we wanted, all men were created equal and we were going to have this checks and balances, and it was beautiful conceptually. Yet, what did we do in practice? What happened was there was this whole group of people that were immediately in this sort of superior, I've got the power position. And who were in the lower echelon that were in the inferior, I don't have any power position. And maybe even believed it about themselves. Who were those people when we first came over from Europe?
Oh, I didn't know this was a test.
Those people were the Native American Indians. Yeah. They were the women that didn't have the vote. They were definitely children. They were definitely the minority groups, the slaves, and all kinds of people fit into that lower category. So right away, we set up this win-lose dynamic in our actual practice. And what happens is that whenever you have a win-lose, superior-inferior dynamic, the result is anger, hostility, revenge, resentment, fear.
And it perpetuates itself, too.
Absolutely. It becomes its own vicious cycle. And so what happens is over time, those people in that inferior, powerless position, they may still feel inferior, but they're going to, by God, band together and help themselves to feel powerful and connected lovable, and all of those things. And what they're going to do, though, generally, is go into sort of a retaliation mode. We're going to now overpower you. And that's what happened in a lot of the movements trying to balance the scales. The women's movement, the civil rights movement, the industrial revolution where the unions formed. We think of those things now as sort of like these sort of heroic moments that were so valuable, and they were, but they were actually often fraught with a lot of pain and dissension and disharmony. And what happened is a lot of times that group of people that were gaining power often used that power over, the unions sometimes were corrupt and would overpower the owners, and sometimes the women would take advantage of their situation because they were so angry and resentful for so long, and the same with the minorities. And now we're seeing with the children. And a lot of people will say, well, why don't we just go back to the good old days when kids knew how to mind? Well, that wasn't the good old days. That was when we had slavery and when women couldn't vote. So, we don't want to hold with that. So we have this archaic way that we set up our organizations, and we still operate out of those same ways of doing things. So our sense of community is very skewed to what wholeness requires. And one of the things that I just recently discovered is an organizational model that is exactly what my company does, but I had never heard of this term. And the term is chaord. It's a chaotic model, and it's an evolving model that's it's very aligned with what they're finding out in physics and in mathematics, and all kinds of sciences are coming together. What chaotic means, the first three letters K, C-H-A, stand for chaos. And the second three letters, order, the O-R-D, so that's where the K-ord word comes from. But what it is it's harnessing the natural chaos, and by chaos, I'm talking about a good thing, the creativity, the initiative, kind of the raw materials of people's purpose and their vision and all those seeds that they're bringing in their wholeness to this whole table. And that chaos is a very important thing to allow, but not on its own. It also requires a firm purpose and a strong sense of direction and a trajectory that's set in place so that people can then, within that purpose, within that vision, operate in a way that is flexible and that's creative. So what that means is that it's a type of institution, if you will, community, where power is shared to the maximum degree.
That's a paradigm shift in and of itself.
Oh, my gosh. Absolutely. In fact, most people are afraid. In fact, most people are afraid of chaos because it seems so negative.
And to think of power being shared is also a loss of control. I want to go further into this chaotic model, but I also want to get the fourth core social need down.
Oh, yes, yes.
So after the sense of connection and community, what is the fourth one?
The fourth one is actually knowing that we have contributions. I'll just say a little bit about that because that is so important. If you think about any group that wants to enlist more involvement. Just for example, let's say you're part of a networking group and you want more members. What is the first thing most people do when they want more engagement? They'll usually give some sort of an incentive. Oh, let's offer them a free this or a free that, or give them a gift if they come or a gift if they sign up. That's a typical way that we try to get people to be involved. But what's often unrecognized is what people would be more satisfied with is an opportunity to contribute. And we actually sort of buffer people from having to give more. And yet, think about some of the most meaningful times in your life, even some of the most tragic times like 9/11. That's where people really came forward and had tremendous opportunity to make contribution. What did it do? It created a lot of love, community,
because
caring.
You're giving and contributing.
Absolutely. Well, you're actually not even thinking it about it a lot. You're just giving because the need is right there and it's who you really are.
Right.
And it brings out this huge sense of wholeness and well-being, and yet we don't tap that. So many times we miss that opportunity. So if I were to give recommendation to somebody that's trying to get more engagement in any kind of organization or in their family, ask for more help. Isn't that an interesting reversal?
It is, because most people... That's one thing that it's very hard for a lot of people.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a it's interesting because when we ask for help, we think of ourselves as inferior when we're asking for help. And we're not. It's just another, it gives somebody the opportunity to be superior, which in that moment might be the balancing of the scales of wholeness.
And is it really being superior, or is it really being able to just share from that place?
Well, that's a great question, because there is no superior and there is no inferior. Right. It's important to use those words. Actually choose the inferior position and allow someone to be superior, because by using that concept, you actually break down the illusion of it. If I say, you know what, I'm going to let somebody give to me today because I want to feel what it feels like to be in the inferior position, what that does is it starts to break up that whole thing that it is inferior and superior.
Yeah, I mean, just those words just make me uncomfortable.
Yes,
I mean, I
do.
I hate the words positive. I hate. I don't. All right, let me get really clear with my language here. Those dichotomies for me, it's because I see everything as connected anyway. So superior, inferior just puts a little thing in my gut. But I understand what you're saying.
Once we get past that, that's exactly, we see it for what it is.
Yeah.
There is no superior or inferior. Contribution is a big part of what we don't ask for, because we are afraid to feel vulnerable. We are afraid to feel in the inferior position. That's why it's such a given in our culture that it's better to give than receive. Why? Why is it we're more comfortable when we give something, but if we receive something...
Because our mindset is that we would be superior.
Exactly. Even though we don't like the word and we'd like to think that we're not prone to that, it's just part of our culture is so driven by, I've got to be better than, and my only way to feel lovable is to be more special than you and all of that stuff, and it's just child's toys.
Because I think it ties back to this chaotic model, if I understood that correctly.
Right.
So how does this all work together?
Well, that's a great question, and it does tie back, and it is even beyond superior inferiority, which is just a piece of it. One of the things is that we have set up the way that we operate in the world based on sort of a mechanistic model that's really seen its last days. We can't continue with this model because we have a global economy now. We're so connected now, and we're so fast in our evolution that it's time that we move into a model that is consistent with where we are evolutionary-wise, and and also consistent with these human needs. So what does that look like? What that looks like is an environment where we stop being focused on mass production and efficiency and productivity, and we start focusing on how do we take the raw material of all of the collective gifts that people are bringing and use that more quickly. And part of what has got to happen for that is that we have to start allowing self-organizing to take place. I'll give you an example of this. I'll give you an example to kind of put some flesh on the bones. When we had the big disaster in Florida, and the Coast Guard had some amazing training where they're trained in what are their primary purposes for the tasks that they do. They're very purpose-driven as opposed to activity-driven. So they're not given a set of rules of these are your activities and you can't step out of that box. They're focused on understanding why they're doing the activities that they're doing and how to have flexibility within their purposes.
So you mean like when the hurricane hit?
Yes, when the hurricane hit.
The purpose was to save people or what?
Right, to save people, to have certain levels of priority and safety and responsibility and so on. And they had those boundaries around their purposes. And what happened is because they had the flexibility for each person to self-manage and to have governance in the situation that occurred, they were one of the most responsive groups because they didn't have to go through this bureaucratic red tape to get permissions for everything. What has to happen is if you help people to define their purpose and you give them the freedom to be self-managing, that allows them
to be creative.
And you have to let go. You have to let go of that control. You have to know that people can manage their purpose if you give them the right support, you give them the right tool set, you give them the right encouragement.
I can really see how there's a lot of old belief systems that are addressed in that process because as, say, a supervisor, maybe they have issues with letting go of control. Maybe they see giving responsibility to somebody else as a sign of weakness. It's almost like how they're perceived within a company.
Yes. Well, that's the biggest impediment to this evolution is our own view and perception of who we are and what we're here to do. Managers, for example, in most corporations, they believe that their primary responsibility is to manage people, to motivate them, and to evaluate them. It's not. Their primary responsibility is to help transfer responsibility to people and help them to develop their own internal leadership. Most of us don't take that job on because we think, well, gosh, where does that leave me if I'm the manager?
Exactly.
What does that look like? Actually, that's a much harder job. It's a much harder job to share power with people and have them pick it up and have them set their purpose and to have them start self-governing, have them start trusting that they can say what they mean and mean what they say and all those things that go with real responsibility and real self-governance and self-management. And that is a much harder task, but yet it's so new that people feel like they're losing some kind of status or they're losing some sort of ground or meaning. And once they understand that, no, this is a tougher, more challenging way to evolve.
And they would probably be held in much higher regard by those that they're working with because they're able to do that.
The people that are receiving that power and that self-management, they're actually getting their 4 core needs met. And so they are going to appreciate that manager because they recognize that they're being honored for the gifts that they bring. I see it all the time in companies. I see the frontline people saying, why aren't they giving us more responsibility? We know what's needed. We're the ones that have to day-to-day deal with this situation, so why aren't we given a little more latitude here?
It's almost like, they don't think that we can do it.
Well, and it's even from a very positive intention. We believe that if we can protect people from uncertainty and we can protect and we can buffer them from problems, as if it's like dandruff that you have to try to get off your shirt, we believe that that's being helpful. That's actually keeping people from the opportunity to use all of what they have to bring to the table.
As you're talking, I'm also envisioning like parents with children.
Absolutely. We do parent training. That's how I first got introduced to this model. And the very first thing I was taught was your job as a parent is to do yourself out of a job as quickly as possible. And I remember feeling this sense of a loss, almost like, well, gosh, isn't that what I signed up for?
I actually wrote a song about that, about letting go. And it was the moment that I realized that, my responsibility is to teach my kids to be independent. They already are.
Right. You want to set up the environment so that they can actually live within that.
And absolutely. They could actually live without me. And that's a hard thing to do for parents.
And you have to be able to allow sort of a healthy opposition as well to create strong cooperation and at the same time allow people to challenge the status quo, to have new ideas and not have them be shot down. All kinds of things have to happen in a chaotic organization. What's so amazing about it is it ends up being the much more efficient way. Here we're trying to use this mechanistic way of treating people and and treating institutions because we're trying to go for productivity and efficiency. And what we're doing is we're disheartening people where they're giving less and less of themselves, and ultimately it becomes much less efficient. Mm-hmm. So all this wholeness is there. Here we're talking about wholeness. And we have not known how to harness that wholeness so that it can be in service to ourselves and to others. And that's the unfortunate part about it in our communities. One of the things that I will say about wholeness with our company is one of the first things we train our instructors in is that when you meet with any client, remember that they are whole and complete, that there's nothing broken, nothing that has to be fixed. We are bringing in a toolbox of new tools for them to pick up or not, but that in and of themselves they're doing enough and it's good enough. And that's important for us to always remember.
What an awesome philosophy. I love that. In this last section, let's go through these 4 core social needs and make them practical, make them applicable to our everyday life.
Well, the first thing I would say about that is if you learn nothing else at all from this talk would be just to remember those 4 core needs, that they are something that you want to start looking at your life and saying, gosh, is this thing that I'm doing in this moment, is this making me feel powerful? Is it making me feel lovable? Is it making me feel connected? For example, let's say you find yourself blaming somebody about something. That doesn't feel very powerful. And it doesn't feel very lovable, lovable about yourself, you know, or contributing, all those things. So you can start to use that as a measure for whether you want to continue something. And what I would suggest is just interrupt it. If you find you're in the midst of doing something that does not satisfy those core needs in yourself or another person, just stop mid-sentence if you find that you're doing that and just switch it. That would be one of the ways that you could actually just use the 4 core needs as a whole, kind of as a measure. A lot of times we want certain things for ourselves or for other people, but we don't really look at the methods we have been using to get there.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to step outside of our behavior and observe it.
Absolutely. So as much as you can, kind of just use that as your bar.
And I always like to kind of make it easy with like one-word things. So could we use basically powerful, lovable, connected, contributing?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. So
yes, absolutely, and it just is a great measure. And when you see somebody in a negative behavior, they're doing something that's obnoxious or offensive to you, ask yourself, I wonder what core need they're not feeling right now. Maybe they're not feeling powerful. Maybe they're not feeling very lovable, or they're not feeling connected, or they don't feel like they're making a contribution.
I like that. I'm glad that we brought it down to those 4 words.
Absolutely.
Because that helps me.
Yeah, we keep that on everything we send out just about because it's so key to what we do. Another thing that I do, and a lot of people do affirmations, I like to do affirmations around my sense of lovableness. So one of the things I did for a long, long time, because I was a big having to prove myself kind of person. So what I did for literally months is I would say to myself, I'm doing my best and it's good enough. And what's so beautiful about that is that everyone is always truly doing their best. And sometimes it's very tempting to believe we're not, or that someone else isn't. And just by reaffirming that I'm doing my best and it's good enough, it gives you the courage. That's one way that you can help yourself to remain aware of your lovableness. Another thing is that a lot of times when we start creating a negative feeling about another person, it's because there's something we want that we're not okay with asking for. So if you notice that you're starting to go, well, they should know better, and they shouldn't have done this to me, and they shouldn't be, taking this from me or doing this to me. A lot of times it's because you want to ask yourself the question, what is it that I want that I don't want to put on the table that I want? And we do a whole lot of work in our programs around just putting on the table what I want is, and are you willing to give it to me?
Okay, so give us an example.
Well, I'll just give you an example that I've been doing in my own work. Because we teach this, I've been really living it. And when I talk to a customer and I know I want to work with them, I say to them, I want to work with you. Are you willing to give me your business? Are you willing to work with our company? And they'll say yes, and it's very exciting. Or sometimes no, but most of the time they'll respond to it. You can feel it in your whole system when you actually say the words, what I want is. And when we teach this, there's a lot of resistance to just this whole way of saying what I want is. What happens is people want to say what I need is, or what I wish for. Or they want to say, well, man, she should have known already, or he should have known. Men really understand this because women are pretty notorious sometimes for saying, well, he should have known that I wanted his help and all of that. And it's because we feel we've got so many things that tell us we're selfish and we're bad because we say we want stuff.
Oh, heaven forbid you ask for what you want.
Right. You could get it.
You could.
Or you would fear that you wouldn't be able to handle a no.
Yeah,
and
the rejection.
and we actually would do better to just ask for it and have the no than not ask for it and be struggling and feeling so powerless about asking. What I have found in my own experience is that if I ask, even if I receive a no, I feel more powerful. So that's just one.
Well, because you honored yourself.
Absolutely. You honored yourself. And you don't waste your energy blaming the other person and focusing on them because you can't change them.
Creating
exactly.
that story, that mental
story.
That mental story.
It really breaks people apart.
Okay, so asking for what you want is definitely an act of loving yourself.
And expressing power. It's a powerful position to say what I want is, and are you willing? I can't tell you how many times people are uncomfortable with doing that. I even went on a retreat one time with my coach because one of the things that I'm real committed to is my own growth and the growth of my company. So we have an emotional intelligence coach for our company. And we went on a trip, we did a big retreat, and one of the first things we had to do is everything we were asked to do, we had to give an answer. So if we were asked, where do you want to go eat, everyone in the group would answer where they had. Oh my God, I felt like a deer in the headlights. And I remember once I was talking to the coach, and I said to her, what are you having to drink with your dinner? And she said, why do you want to know? And I said, because I wanted to know if you might want to split a milkshake. She said, what kept you from just saying, I want to split a milkshake. Do you want to split one with me? It was almost as if I had to weigh whether she would come halfway with me before I could even put it on the table. And what I really learned from that particular situation was how invasive all my questions were. Even though...
Were they invasive or did you just
when
perceive
I'd say,
it that way?
well, no, she perceived it that way. She said, you saying to me, what are you going to have to drink? What are you going to do? You know, it was almost like, why are you asking me all these questions? It's much more respectful and more powerful to just say, hey, you know what? I want to split a milkshake. Would you like to split one?
Yeah.
But that's how aware I became of how hard it was for me to ask for what I wanted.
I totally resonate with that. I do that a lot with my husband.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's listening. He's like,
there was a woman on our retreat that was beautiful, could have been a model, and she had been wanting to find out why she wasn't married because she had always wanted to be married and she hadn't been, and this whole thing about asking for what she wanted just kind of irritated her. And she said to the coach, you know, why do we have to do this? Like when I'm with a man, I don't care about what I want. I don't care if I go to this restaurant or that or what movie I see. And I like to be feminine, and I think it's feminine to sort of give way to what the man wants, you know. And our coach was able to show her that she does care about what she wants, that everyone cares about what they want, and that if you don't give yourself what you want when you're with a man or in any situation, what you're doing is your subconscious is saying, you know what, it kind of stinks to be with another person if it means I have to give up what I want, so I'll just create it that I don't have a person so that I can at least when I'm not with a person have what I want. She was amazed by that because she had such a resistance to it. So that's one place that we can be powerful.
It reminds me of the movie Runaway Bride. She did the same thing. Anyway, okay. The connected core value, feeling connected. What can we do this week to help us get more in touch with that sense of feeling connected to ourselves and to community?
There's so many ways we can do that, but one of the things is just a simple practical thing is just be comfortable being in the physical space with other people. A lot of times we're so distant as Americans from even just touching each other or getting close to each other. Being willing to make eye contact with the people that you see. This is a great little piece for this. I met this man one time that whenever he would meet a big crowd of people, he would remember everybody's name. And I said, how did you do this? Do you have some kind of memory trick you use? He said, no, what I realized is as soon as I meet another person, well, this is true of everybody, we put this guard up because we have this automatic, is it safe? That's our primary question a lot of times. So what happens is in that moment we put our guard up, that's when they're telling us their name. That's why so many of us can't remember their name 2 seconds later. What was her name? And so what he would do is when he would meet anybody, he would prepare himself by saying, what am I afraid to see in me that I wouldn't want them to judge? And as soon as he did that, he relaxed the guard and he could remember everybody's name. And I thought that was so interesting. So one of the little tips that you could use is when you meet somebody, take a breath. And let yourself feel your whole body present when you're meeting them. And chances are you'll remember their name a lot better. That's what I find is happening more and more when I remember to do that.
That's an awesome suggestion. I love that. Or even if you don't even talk to them, just making the eye contact.
Yes.
Even in the grocery store. You know, you're going down an aisle, just look.
Yes. Well, and in Europe, I know that they touch each other so much more, and we're so conditioned that that's a bad thing to do, but really people crave just putting your hand on their arm or their shoulder or their hand or what have you.
That's a great suggestion. I like that. Okay, and then this idea of knowing we have contributions and And asking for help goes along with that?
Yeah, just start noticing that when you want more engagement from people, instead of trying to give something to them, ask them for something. Ask them how they want to contribute. Ask them what the gift is that they want to bring to the situation or their advice. People love to know that you believe that they have answers and solutions for them. I ask my 9-year-old for ideas all the time, and she loves it, and she comes up with some pretty good ones.
And then, okay, so that's when you're empowering somebody else for the contribution. What about when you want to offer something?
When you want to offer something,
Yeah.
just do it. And I think a lot of us, we withhold our own ability to get that need met because we're afraid we could fail. Go for the contribution. If you fail, you don't know what failure really is anyway. So
the kind of contributions that we could do this week would be...
go, the Pay It Forward movie, how popular
Yeah.
that was? It doesn't have to be something mind-blowing. Just do something simple like that man getting in his truck and helping me
Exactly.
get here. That was a great contribution, and he had the biggest smile on his face.
So simple acts of kindness.
Absolutely. So it doesn't have to be huge.
Well, Judy, you have given us some wonderful food for thought on wholeness and the core social needs, and as we're behaving and acting and in relationship and community with others, becoming the observer of our behaviors and asking the question, is this powerful, lovable, connected, and contributing?
Yes.
Did I get those right?
Yes, absolutely.
And Judy, I'm sure there's some listeners that are thinking, wow, how do I get in touch with this woman? Give us your contact information.
One way you can get in touch with us is to visit our website, which is www.expandinghumanpotential.com. Another way is to call our offices, which is 314-878-9100. We'd be happy to talk with you.
Say it again.
314-878-9100. And we would love to talk with you. We do work with corporations. We work with schools. We work with families.
Judy, it's been a pleasure. And we want to thank you for being with us today. And just a reminder, this program will be available to listen at your convenience again through our podcast. Probably in about a week, we'll have it up.